They don't necessarily see that I could be intelligent, that I could speak for myself. They tend to automatically...
Guys, don't be rude. Go ahead.
I tend to get belittled a lot, and that comes from men, not necessarily women.
Hello, today we are looking at Candice Owens' best college debates. Be sure to wait until the end. Let's jump straight into the video.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. So I noticed you had a lot of thoughts on feminism. I'm a feminist, but
Really fine.
I was just wondering, how do you differentiate between the extremism that exists in feminism as it does across, multiple different ideologies, but how do you differentiate between the extremism and how, feminists like me think? I don't hate men.
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. It's a great, great question. So what you have to realize about the left when you talk about extremism is they hack words that once had real meaning, and they take them for their own nefarious goals, right? So they'll say racism, and you'll go, oh my God, no, really, racism used to exist, but now it means organizing your pantry. That's obviously not racism. That's completely ridiculous. You see something like feminism, and once upon a time, women were fighting for the right to vote. Well, now we have that. We have equal footing, and now they're using those terms. They're hiding behind the shield of feminism, and they're doing actually horrible things in society. And I blame feminists for almost every ill that we have right now because they've encouraged people not to act as a woman, and they bash men all the time, and I think that they have contributed the most to the breakdown of family in terms of an ideology. Now, for you...
True.
No, I'm getting there. Okay. Now, for you, you're like, okay, but I actually am somebody that just believes in equality, that there should be equality between the sexes, right?
I think it's more culturally and socially, not necessarily in the realm of legality.
Sure, so I'm going to ask you, what is it socially, so you could call yourself something, right? That means that there's some fight that you have. What is it socially that you and I have as women that we don't have that men do? Why is there a need for you to be a feminist?
I think as women, we are undervalued when it comes to our intelligence. I think people, especially for me, as a woman who... I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Go ahead, let her talk.
For me, as a woman, I feel like a lot of people look at me and think I'm superficial. They think I'm vapid. They don't necessarily see that I could be intelligent, that I could speak for myself. They tend to automatically...
Guys, don't be rude. Go ahead.
I tend to get belittled.
Is this true, by the way? It seems as if a lot of times some of these things, like they're made up stuff. Like, really, I'm not so sure about that. But anyways, let's watch the video.
I tend to get belittled a lot, and that comes from men, not necessarily women, right?
So you're saying in your personal capacity, men are belittling you, right? But when you talk about affecting actually a social change, this might be your personal experience, but does that mean that all women are going through this or that all women are experiencing this belittlement by men?
And see, I understand that, but I think also when I listen to you speak and you speak on why you don't like feminism, I hear a lot of anecdotal work and I hear a lot of personal experience, like your experience in that one class that you had, whereas I've had 5-6 classes in my gender studies courses, and I've never experienced anything
that's totally
like that.
That's totally fine.
You know what I mean?
They're
so
just
I just don't feel like it's fair to take personal
it's totally fine. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm actually talking about the real world consequences of the dangerous ideology telling women that they have to take their clothes off, that they should be on TikTok. I'm talking about real world consequences.
Yeah,
I'm talking about literally the fact that women are no longer, they're by and large all climbing the corporate ladder and that children are being ceded over to the state. So I was giving you an anecdotal example of what happened in my feminist class, but the repercussions of that are seen everywhere. What I am saying is that what I'm offering to you is not to feel like you have to give yourself an ism, right? Don't feel like you have to put yourself in a box. Don't feel like you have to put yourself into some weird social constructs. I think that what you'll find with time is that it constrains you unnecessarily. I don't have a problem with the fact if you want to identify as a feminist and you think that there is some fight that needs to be ended. I don't personally think that that's...
Is conservatism not a box any more than feminism is?
Well, saying that I have conservative principles, feminism is not being a conservative or being a liberal, right? You're talking about an ideology, right? A system you think
I would assume conservatism is also an ideology as well, is it not?
Sure. Conservatism is an ideology. These are the things that we believe. You could say that everything is an ideology. What I'm saying to you is that I would not necessarily paint yourself into a corner. You don't seem to me like you have any issues speaking up. You don't seem to me like you feel like you're constrained in any way. You're standing up here today. I would offer to you that there's never been a more remarkable time to be a woman in this society. By every statistic, we are doing better than men. That's a fact, right? Men have a higher, we are graduating at a higher rate than men. Men have higher suicide rates. That's why I said to you, despite how you're feeling, what are the real world implications that suggest to you that you are somehow beneath men? You might have a personal experience where a man
we can talk about sexual assault everywhere, in the military, in the home.
So are these the things that you're fighting to end sexual assault?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, great. You don't have to be a feminist to fight to end sexual assault.
You don't have to be,
men and women.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't believe you have to
It's a great cause.
But it's, of course, a part of the ideology.
Men and women go through that. I just said to him, one of the biggest things that I give to every year is for human sex trafficking. It doesn't require to be a feminist. Now, you seem really committed to it. I've said to you since the very beginning, if you want to be a feminist girl, put it on a T-shirt, wear it, put a hashtag. I'm just telling you, don't unnecessarily put yourself into a corner, and to recognize that it has never been a greater time. I would offer it is a way better time in this society to be a woman.
Yeah, that was good answer from Candice Owens, I think, a lot of these college students, they are victims of what has become of the world today, especially, that's usually what happens, especially when one consumes a lot of media-related stuff, those programs. Some of them, they tend to brainwash people, like literally, I'm not saying this just trying to be being funny, but like being honest, so I would also, even add on to what Candice Owens has said. People, they need to become students, students of themselves. Like, read matters for yourself, discover ideas for yourself. I mean, don't literally just take everything, that you hear or that you learn, is always the final thing, pertaining a matter. You see, because sometimes, a lot of times actually, especially with even social media, a lot of brainwashing, is now happening, and it's actually sad, it's actually sad because you would wonder that, like the great saying goes, that the future belongs to the young generations, and the younger leaders, are the younger generations. But then you tend to wonder, like, what future does it hold? Sometimes when you look at the kind of quality, quality of students that is being produced nowadays, especially from academic institutions, you tend to wonder. Anyways, let's jump straight into the video and watch further.
Oh my gosh, I literally love this outfit because, no, it's okay. I was just saying I love your outfit because literally my son right now loves Peter Pan, and I just bought him the hook. So this is incredible. I love that. Go ahead.
All right, so can you mateys hear me?
Pardon?
Can you mateys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so my question for you was, I believe in high school you had a racial discrimination lawsuit, and you received $50,000 from your school as a result of this. And you've recently claimed that, like, racism isn't, like, such a big deal. So are you interested in perhaps giving that money back, or, like, what's the plan there?
So you're not educated about my life, and I'm very happy to educate you. And by the way, the best way to get educated about my life is to purchase my book, where I talked about this in chapter 2. I do just want to tell you that, because it's remarkable to me that I wrote about this extensively in my book, and people always think this is a gotcha. They're like, gotcha, this happened to you in high school. Yeah, it's actually the reason I am conservative is because of this thing that happened to me in high school, which was a race incident that involved a kid that was my best friend, and he, I got a boyfriend, that's the truth, and stopped hanging out with all my friends, as high school girls do, totally innocent, normal situation. And one night, he obviously had too much to drink and got 3 people who I had never heard of or met to leave really horrific racist messages. Now, I've never once said that racism doesn't exist. That's something that was created by the root, and people keep saying I've said it. Actually, I say the exact opposite. Racism will always exist as long as human beings exist, as human beings are ignorant, right? And that's when you meet somebody that's actually racist, they're just ignorant. It's the people that I'm like, I could never even be offended by you being a racist because I'm going to be so far ahead of you in life. It's ridiculous, right? But going back to the story, this kid used to be my friend. He was upset that I stopped hanging out with him. And unfortunately, one of the people that left these messages happened to be the governor of Connecticut's son. So this turned overnight into a political sensational story. It's my first introduction to the media, my first introduction to the NAACP, who showed up at the front of my school, had never talked to me, but tried to raise money off of real hurt that I was going through. Nobody tried to sit down and actually resolve the situation. Was the kid a racist? Well, obviously not, because we were best friends for years, right? Was he hurt? Yes. Did he say racist things? Yes. That situation, and by the way, the money refund that you're talking about was because while this was a huge news cameras outside event, homeschooled. I had to stay home and homeschool and get private tutoring while this was going on until the FBI could trace these phone calls. So if you're stepping to the plate to tell me that that's not right, that you got reimbursed for being out of school, you're making not a very valid point, I don't think. But the moral of what my lesson was that people are raising money. What I learned from it was people are literally raising money off of racism. The NAACP never wants racism to go away. Okay, because they can fund on finding it everywhere, and they didn't care about the fact that I was a young teenager. I learned a lesson about the media. It's all about selling headlines and selling your story and your point of view, and nobody looked at me or those boys for matter. One of them was 12 and was being called a racist, and it impacted the rest of that kid's life. These kids were suicidal, on drugs, plenty of arrests after it, because that's how traumatic it was to have adults rush, and instead of adulting, labeling kids for the rest of their lives without trying to get to the root of the situation. So I appreciate the Captain Hook heroic attempt to catch me at my own game. But I am very proud of what I went through in high school, and I thank God for it, because it woke me up to a lot of the things that we're facing today in our society.
I like that answer from Candice Owens. I think she was spot on. A lot of times there are people, there are organizations that seem to want chaos to continue, to want problems to continue. Why? Because they seem to benefit from the chaos, from the challenges and from the problems that people may be going through, which in turn may actually suggest that they are not really after resolving challenges, for example, such as racism, for instance. For example, she said she was just only a young girl. She was about a teenager. And also those guys who happened to be involved in this racial act, this could have been an opportunity for the adults to step in to help these young children, show them that which is right, show them how to conduct themselves, you see. But instead, they chose to use the whole thing, the whole situation, to achieve whatever secretive things or aim or propaganda that they had, which is actually sad, you see, because you would tend to wonder that, just imagine, think of it this way. Any challenge or any problem that doesn't get the attention it needs, it only but grows. You see, that's actually a truth, Anything that is just left there is going to grow. It's like if there is a farm and there are weeds all over, and then the farmer shows up one day and says, oh, there are weeds in the farm, and just goes back. Guess what's going to happen? The weeds are going to grow. But rather, if the farmer shows up and says, I am going to attend to this farm, I'm going to make sure that all the weeds, they're taken out, and I'm going to plant corn in the farm. Guess what's going to happen? Corn is going to grow in the farm. That's the same way with our lives, If there are challenges, if there are problems to the society that we see, the only way they go is through taking those necessary steps to resolve those challenges, to solve them. Love always prevails, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care who you are. Love always prevails, There's no one who is naturally born with hate in their hearts. Hate is something that is taught to people, especially from a young age. And it's said that those things are allowed to happen. Let's watch further the video.
Hi.
Hi. I had an honest question for you, because I feel like your grandfather's story is very inspiring. But you say that people complain so much, But if people didn't complain in those days and fight for people's rights and fight for feminism, which is just equality for women, then you wouldn't be on the stage today and I wouldn't be here asking you this question. And so if people aren't complaining, as you say, and fighting for rights, then nothing would happen. So how can you reconcile these differences?
Yeah, so first I want to say I understand your sentiment, because when I was your age, I thought the same thing, that feminism is just about equality. One of the brilliant things that the left does is they repackage words. It's clearly not feminism anymore. It's designed to actually rip apart women and men, to make women paranoid about men all the time, and every industry is controlled by a man, and to make being on your own, I want to do all by myself, aspirational, right? It's about all my single ladies, who needs a man. So just because you're using the word feminism, it doesn't mean that it is feminism, right? And as best evidenced by the fact that they just keep using it when obviously we are on equal footing with men, and unless you can tell me what you're not allowed to do as a woman in society that men are allowed to do, right? That would be like a systemic problem that we would need to fix. And so also I want to just remind you that I said earlier that you don't know true history, and when you wake up to the evils of feminism, they were fixated on breaking up the family. They liked death, right? They were creating a cult of death and destruction everywhere, all across the world. And just to be clear, the earliest iteration of a feminist that you're talking about that you deem to be heroic would be Margaret Sanger. That's a first wave feminist, and she hated me, so I feel nothing towards those feminists. And when I look around and I see women who are now crying on TikTok, and they don't understand, they did everything they were supposed to do, and I actually empathize and sympathize with them, and then suddenly they're in the world and they're making $25,000 a year, and they can't do bad all by themselves, single ladies, and actually their bodies start coming online, and their biology starts coming online, and they actually want to get married and have children, and they're realizing that they've stepped into a design that they were promised was going to be, as you hear, it's just going to be great, it's all going to be amazing, and it actually isn't that amazing. I don't know why. What are we even fighting anymore? Men holding doors? That's the new feminist cause? Like, no, equality means don't hold the door. No, I like when men pay for my meals. Love when my husband pays for my meals when we're recording. I like having the door held for me. In a perfect world, our society was so much better when women were involved every single day with their children before we handed them over to the Department of Education. And so I do not see feminism as having accomplished anything in our society. I actually think it was a nightmare that is being repackaged in our textbooks. So I would implore you to just do a little more research and start with Emma Goldman.
That's spot on. I mean, that's spot on. That's spot on from Candice Owens there. You know, that's actually one of the evil things that happens now in our world, you know, because you'd find out that when people or when someone somewhere, you know, hasn't invested enough time to learn a subject or to learn about a matter, there's always going to be some certain people who takes advantage of that, you know, ignorance that other people have, you know, for their own good, you know, to push their own agendas, which is actually sad, you know, which is actually sad because a lot of times through these ideologies, these feminism things, a lot of young girls, they are promised the future, they are promised equality and things of that kind. But you'd wonder, or you would realize what then happens on the ground. At the end of the day, it's simply hate that has been repackaged, you know. And that's not the way to build any society, by hating on your fellow either brother or sister, you know, a colleague, or you know, other individuals, if I can just put it that way. That is not going to help anyone. You see, actually hate is destructive, you know. A lot of families, they have been broken down because people hated each other, or because there was no love amidst individuals, you see. It's the same thing with all this feminism thing, you see. And I always like the way Candice Owens always answers this question. She always refers the people or those who ask the questions to go and do your research. Really, I mean, go and really open the books. You know, read through the knowledge, and you'll be surprised. You see, you will be surprised, because at the end of the day, what we all need is love. You know, what we all need is love, not all this hatred like, men are always against me, I don't like them, you know, I can do all better by myself, you know, I don't need anybody type of, you know, an ideology or a viewpoint, I don't think it does any good, but rather the negative effects that come from it, I think they're very detrimental. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tell me also what you think in the comment section. I would love to hear your viewpoint. And thank you so much also for watching the video. If you've not yet subscribed, please do so that you don't miss any of our future uploads. It's bye-bye for now.